you are building a business that sells music. It can't just be all sort of artistically driven. Yes, it has to, of course, it has to have that, but it has to be mirrored with the right business principles that afford it an opportunity and a chance to survive.
Welcome to your weekly elevation, your dose of real strategies for real results in dance music. I'm Olivia, and today's conversation is with one of the most influential figures in house music, a true pioneer who shaped the sound of dance floors worldwide for over 2 decades. Mark Knight isn't just a legendary DJ and producer, he's the mastermind behind Toolroom Records, one of the most dominant forces in electronic music. With countless chart-topping releases and a touring schedule that's taken him to every corner of the globe, his impact on the scene is immeasurable. But what makes this conversation so valuable isn't Mark's status, it's his revolutionary approach to career building. While many artists were content to ride the temporary waves of success, he was methodically constructing a legacy designed to outlast trends. Instead of following the traditional path of signing to established labels, he created his own platform that reflected his vision. And while talent abounds in this industry, Mark's relentless work ethic has proven to be his greatest competitive advantage. Mark breaks down the philosophy that's kept him at the top of his game for decades, while most careers barely survive a few years. A commitment to self-determination, consistent forward momentum, and the willingness to outwork everyone else in the room. Let's dive in. I know you've told this story a million times, literally, because I've seen it in my research, but the name Toolroom has quite a literal translation. So what made you decide it was time to create your own label?
I think I've been releasing records on other labels, and I've seen how much effort and endeavour and passion I put into the product, and then you hand it over to people, and I wasn't feeling the same amount of participation and care and love at the other end. And I've always felt that if you want to go somewhere in life and you have aspirations and visions, then it's better to be in your own control, because then you only have yourself to blame. If it doesn't work, you can only look inwards at yourself and reflect on what you've done to realise that. And I didn't want to just leave my career and my dreams in the hands of others. And I thought, well, I know where what I want to do. I know what I want to stand for. I planned it out as a vision. It wasn't just an off-the-cuff thing. I very much thought out what I wanted to be and where I wanted to take it. It was, written out a 3-year plan and what my dreams and aspirations and being realistic about what we could achieve within that time frame looked like. And that made more sense than handing over my career to people I didn't know. And one minute might be working at a label, the next minute may be gone. So, I think I am very much a kind of person that, it's not a control freak, I wouldn't say that, but I like to be the master of my own destiny. And I think it made a lot of sense. I felt there was a gap in the market musically for us to have a place. So all the kind of stars were aligned and Toolroom was born.
Wow. It's interesting because what you just said is something that I still hear artists struggle with today, is the lack of development or participation from the label side. And so it's really prompted a lot of artists to either self-release or, build their own platform now. So it's not a new problem, in other words.
Absolutely. I mean, I think no one's going to give your own career the attention and love that you will. No one will. No one will mirror that. And it's about building a team, because you also have to realise where your strengths lie within that equation and with that as a strategy. It happened at a time that my brother was looking for work as well. He'd come out of his job. He wanted to be in music as well, but he didn't want to be the artistic side of it. He wanted to be more in the back room and the business element of it. So it was the right appropriation of skill sets. I didn't want to sit in the office and write out a double taxation form for Portugal, and he didn't want to spend 7 hours auditioning snares. So, we had the right people doing the right thing. And I think that's important as well, to realise where your strengths lie and back yourself by building a team. It's like any business. Just because we're doing music doesn't mean to say we're not doing business. It's called the music business for a reason. And you have to build a company and a strategy that works on the same business principles, whether you're selling washing machines or you're selling tech house. There is a business ethos that runs consistent through that, and you have to have the right people doing the right thing and be prepared to back yourself, financially, and be prepared to have a long-term strategy that initially doesn't give you instant gratification financially. I mean, for the first 3 years, everything I earned, whether I was DJing or royalties, whatever, all went back in the pot and paid the staff, paid the people. So it was like I backed myself. And now we're in a different stratosphere. But unless I did that, I was like, well, look, it doesn't matter if I've got to go to Russia to earn $2,000. That pays for everyone's salary for the next month. It backs myself. So I think you have to go into it with that as an understanding that you are building a business that sells music. It can't just be all sort of artistically driven. Yes, it has to, of course, it has to have that, but it has to be mirrored with the right business principles that afford it an opportunity and a chance to survive. Otherwise, it's all airy-fairy. Oh, let's do music with no understanding of business, and that lasts all of 5 minutes.
Yeah. A lot of people don't want to hear that. It's really
Of course
important. It's they just want to focus on art, but yeah, you can't when you're struggling. If you can't rub two nickels together, how are you gonna focus on your art?
Art's product, however we're going to frame it. Look, of course, you've got to have great product for it to be viable as an entity, but you've got to mirror both sides, both facets of what you're doing here, the music and the business, and have them on song, and then you've got a good chance of it achieving what you should set out to do.
Yeah. And you've managed to be extremely relevant for 20 plus years in an industry where most careers just fail to launch. So how much of that do you credit to artistic choices versus business decisions?
I think it's always 50-50. I think that they are intrinsically linked. You've got to make the right decisions on both ends of the spectrum, where you're going and what you're doing creatively, and how you mirror that with the right business principles and strategy to support that. So I think it's always 50-50. I don't think one begets the other. I think they are intrinsically linked, that you have both things on a very sound basis. And I think we've managed to do that by building the right team. Toolroom, there's no eyes in Toolroom. It's about a collective. It's about the sum of the parts that make the whole. That's what our strength is in our team. Because me individually, I can be great. I can be very good. But as a team, I can be fucking unstoppable. And that's what we built here, is a team. I've got to be the captain of the team. I've got to lead by example. It doesn't matter if I'm playing in Sao Paulo on Saturday night. I'll be the first one in the office on Monday morning making the tea. I'll lead by example. I'll never ask people to do anything that I wouldn't do. I set the tone of the business. And if I can do that at my age, then if you're 22, I don't care what you do the week, and go bananas, live the culture, get stuck in, but be back in Monday, let's go. And I've always tried to lead in that respect and have a vision of where I wanted to take the business. And if you do that, people will follow with passion. And that's what makes Toolroom strong, is that we have a collective approach to what we want to do as a business. And we reflect that at the end of the year. When we get to the end of the year and we look at what money we make, then we split it. And everyone has a piece of the pie, because if you put it in, you can take it out. Because I'm not, all I'm going to do is pay the tax man. So if you graft it out this year, you come work for us, you can share in the rewards of the profits we make. And that's always how we've run the business. But I like to think everyone who works there, all 24 people that work at the label, feel that it's their business. It's not mine. It's our business, and that's the ethos of what we do. And I think that supports and that's got us to where we are. The strength of the business is that it is a really strong collective of people running in the same direction with the same passion.
Wow, that's so important, because I think where a lot of artists feel disenfranchised is when they get to a certain point and then they have labels controlling their art more than they're controlling the art. Yeah. And so that collective approach cuts down walls for people. They understand that, hey, this is all for the greater good, what we're doing here.
but you've got to be driving it. The minute it becomes out of your control, then it's, whatever, however that label prioritizes what you're doing, and you've got to be prepared to accept that you're just part of the system. You're not the system, you're part of the system. And what I've always had, I've always done is control the system. I own every, I'm part of everything from the inception of an idea of a record right the way through to it, making it, right the way through to marketing it, selling it, and then collecting the royalties, and how we can, avail of all the financial opportunities each product, gives us. So I'm across every part of it. Yes, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you've got to be prepared to wear both caps. One day you're the artist, next minute you're the boss, and it's good because it keeps things invigorated all the time. It's like you're not just doing one thing. I love that. I love the challenge. Like today, I'm a producer. Tomorrow, I'm sitting at a board meeting talking about what we're doing, in terms of what's our YouTube strategy, or whatever it might be. So I like the challenge of both, but it means you've got to have discipline. I've never lived that DJ life, where you do a gig and you might go be hanging around for 2 or 3 days, hanging out. I've never ever done that ever. I mean, for example, I've been to Croatia, 40 times, and I've never been more than a day because I need to get back, need to be there for the business. It does sometimes, it is ridiculous, but it means now I'm in a position where I don't need to DJ. I'll do it for fun now. It's a hobby. It's not the main driver of my income. My main driver is the business, but it's taken 22 years to get to that point. But I always wanted to have that as an option, as an exit strategy, that I wasn't tied to live. Live is now just a bonus. If I want to go and DJ and it makes sense, and I can go and play golf there as well, brilliant. And earn money, happy days. But it's turned back into a passion thing and not a necessity, because we run the business parallel to what I was doing as an artist since day one.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically what you're saying is the principles of longevity and making in this industry aren't easy, but they're simple. That's what I'm getting from this. It makes a ton of sense. You've talked a lot about patience and authenticity in past interviews, and especially post-COVID. It's the concept of trends in dance music is just, it's pervasive. And I'm sure there's been moments where following trends would have been easier or more profitable for Toolroom, but you haven't done that. So can you share any times where staying true to the Toolroom sound was, actually challenging, but it paid off in the long run?
Well, when you're sort of making a business up as you go along, there were no blueprints like here's how you run an independent dance label, because we just made it up as we went along. We were there from the very early days, so we didn't have many other examples of businesses that were in our kind of realm that we could follow. So we were doing phenomenally well. I was getting phone calls from Coldplay's managers saying, look, we want to release a dance mixes on Toolroom, because this is the right home to talk to an audience that we need to invigorate. And it was insanely flattering. And we were kind of really pushing the parameters of what we stood for musically, because, it was generating huge revenue. But I was like, this isn't what we're about. This isn't what we're about. We're not about that. We never started to be. It's very flattering. And we did a whole campaign. Miles, our COO, put a campaign together called Reset, where we reset the whole thing. And we're like, right, we're not doing any of that. Getting rid of all of this stuff. We're just going back to basics. We're just doing the music we love with the artists that really represent what we're about. And weirdly, it ended up being our most profitable year ever. Because we'd just gone back to our core values of what we stood for. When we started, we had this strapline that we wanted to be a record label that released get out of jail cards. So say you were playing a gig and it wasn't going so well, you played a Toolroom record and it turned the night around. It got people's attention. That was always our kind of A&R manifesto, to find those records, and we just went back to our basic principles. This is what we stand for, and it wasn't that we were chasing trends. The scale of what we'd become just turned us into something that kind of undermined our original values. And I was like, I didn't do it for money. I didn't do this. I did it because I wanted to stand for something musically, and I wanted to, just leave a marker in electronic youth culture, and that's, and the fact that it turned into a kind of profitable beast is brilliant, but it was never driven on that basis. We've had lots of opportunities to sign artists outside the realms that we're about, would have made us a shit ton of money, but I wanted to always have something I could stand behind at the end and saying with my grandkids and said, look, Granddad did that, we did that, and you can stand behind it with integrity and pride, because money comes and goes, but your legacy and what you leave lasts forever, and that surely got to be the most important thing. So there was a time where our scale and our success kind of maybe distorted our original view on what we wanted to be, but we've never chased trends. We've never tried to. Who cares if we're on trend? We're about setting our own trend, man. We're our own trend. Come and be part of our trend. I'm not looking. I don't want to look outside of what we do. The most successful people don't look outside of their own world because they're so focused on what they want to achieve. So, good luck to everyone else in trends. You'll never catch up with trends. You'll always be one step behind. It's always more important to be your own trend, and I think that's something we've constantly reminded ourselves, and it's afforded us longevity.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know you've talked a lot about being selective with opportunities, which is what you just described to me. But for the artists who, putting on your DJ hat now, for the artists who are just starting out, and feel like they have to say yes to everything because they need the exposure or they need the money, how do you evaluate what to take and what to pass on, especially in the beginning?
Sometimes it's about the things you don't do than the things you do. Sometimes it's about the records you don't release. And it's very hard to objectively look inwards on what you're doing, and take an objective view on what's right or wrong. But sometimes bringing it back closer to home and speaking to your close friends outside the realms of music that aren't influenced by money, who are your genuine friends, and ask them to take a business decision on your behalf based on you being a friend of theirs. It is sometimes a very simple way of looking at those solutions, because they're not that close to it to be caught up on. They don't know what the moves and shakes are within the industry, but they'll give you very honest answers. If I speak to my friends, and my friends are my biggest critiques. If I play them a record, they'll say, that's shit. Do you know what I mean? And they're very honest with me, because we've been friends since we were 5. So they will give you that honest feedback. So I think some of those bigger decisions, bring it closer to home and ask friends of people that don't have a distorted view, or a view that is closer to the industry, that will give you an informed decision on something you should do. Because it's very hard to do that, to take one half and step back and go, okay, if I was managing me, what would I do? That's not an easy thing to do without experience. Right.
Well, I guess step one is they have to find a friend that's not also a DJ, because
exactly.
I mean, I feel like music industry people hang out with music industry people, but you're right. Even when I'm, the business I'm building, the best advice I get sometimes is from one of my clients that's like a banker. And I'm like, wow, I never thought of that.
That's right. Because all these are business decisions at the end of the day. If you take out the nuances of it and you look at it just as a business transaction, what's the right thing to do? Is that the right person to be working with? Is that the right route to go down with it? Are you retaining your integrity? Are you doing this on integrity, or are you doing this for money? What's the right answer here? So speak to someone that is a bit removed, that will give you honesty, because that's what you need in those situations. And as you say, music people have always got, or people who are closer to home, might be making decisions for you based on how that might impact on them and what they could get out of it. So just come out of that and look at it from a different perspective, I guess.
And this is what artists struggle with the most, is the business side of music. So is there anything you wish you understood sooner about protecting your work or your integrity as an artist that you think is so important for new artists to know?
Not really. No, if I'm honest, I didn't. I mean, I think what's really important is that you always do things from the heart. If you do things from here, you're always doing it right. You're always on the right foot. You're always on the front foot. And I think that's really important. And like I say, build a team of people around you that will be experts in you can't be all things to all people. There's big parts of the business, the financial part of it, the accounting outside of it. That's not my world. That's not my thing. There's no point me being involved in that. So get the right people to help you with decisions and build a team. Like I said earlier, a team is unstoppable, but that means being prepared to back yourself financially, give up money, but look at it as if take music out of it. Look as if you're selling jeans. What would you do if you were selling jeans? You wouldn't be out the guy making the jeans and go, hang on, I've got to run to the front of the shop and go and sell a pair. Well, I'll back now, I've got to make another. Hang on, you wouldn't do that. So get someone to work at the front of the shop. You work at the back of the shop. Build a team.
Yeah, 100%. And you've mentioned too in past interviews that one of your strong suits has, been building consistent experiences under the Toolroom brand. And that's how you build a reputation. And I think that is so important to chat about, consistency versus quick wins, because it is so easy to, whether it's a trend or, now burner accounts are the new thing on Twitter, that, artists are hiring burner accounts very secretively to, tweet, whatever it may be, whatever the new hot thing may be. Right. What is it about consistency that's just so much better for your reputation in the long run?
I think that there are no quick wins in anything, are there? I think if you go up like that, you'll come down like that. The trick is to just take small steps up, but always be going upwards, always be going. Don't try and change the world overnight. Have a plan, have a vision of what you can do. Be realistic, be aspirational, but be underpinning with some realism. So, look, in a year's time, I want to be here. Now it's going to take me a year to get there. What are the small steps I need to make in that year that are consistent, that allows me to always, it might be one step forward this month, but at least one step forward. We're taking no steps backwards. That's the thing that frightens me. I've never taken a step backwards, ever. I don't think in my career, financially, in the record, there might not be huge leaps, but they're always steps forward. It's always better to underpin it with positivity going forward than having to deal with those peaks and troughs. I think that's a big part of the problem in our music industry is mental wellness, is mental wellness and health, because we get these huge ups and downs. I just don't have that. I just go along and keep stepping forward, small steps forward, but small steps every single day. And I think if you plot that out as a strategy and you write out, black and white, you look at it and go, right, this is what I'm going to achieve. And to get to that point, I need consistency, I need integrity, and I need consistency. And those things will give you, a longer and a longevity. They will do. But write out, put it down in black and white, look at the plan, write a plan. And then when things pop up, because they do, opportunities pop up, and they go, does that fit in the plan? As flattering it is, that offer, is it in the plan? No. Okay, so then we don't do it. Is that offering? Oh, that's in the plan, so we'll do that. But, put it down in black and white, because every day creates new opportunities, new problems. But if you have a manifesto, if you have a plan, a strategy, you can always refer back and go, well, that's not in, so we're not going to do that. And as brilliant as that phone call is, we're just going to say no, because it doesn't fit where we want to go. And that might create an obstacle and send us backwards. But we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward every single day. So I think, it really, there's no, dark arts or magic science around music. Is a very simple thing. It's a very, very straightforward thing. If you break it down to that and act, accordingly, and have a plan, have a strategy, and then you apply creativity to it, and then bam, away you go. You're singing on all fronts.
Yeah, it's unsexy though, which is why so many people don't do it. The strategic plan, nobody wants to talk about strategic plans.
No, but strategic plans means you can drive Lamborghinis, do you know? And then it becomes sexy again. So, do you know what I mean? It might seem a bit like actual work, but that's the sort of thing that, the people that are really successful in this industry, they really have a backbone of all of those things. It might look all glitz and glamour on the surface, but let me tell you, the people who really get to the top and who are there consistently for a long period of time, have a backbone of strategy and all the components around that business to support it. It doesn't all happen on a whim. That's just an Instagram non-reality.
So true. Beyond the unsexy parts, is there anything, looking back at your career as an artist and, as the leader of Toolroom and its growth, is there anything that you consider one of your most valuable business decisions that maybe other artists can learn from?
I think the whole process, I don't think there's one thing in isolation. I think it's a consistent narrative of doing things with structure and forecast and strategy and planning, writing out budgets, all the non-sexy stuff, from the business side of it. I know we talked a lot about it. There's the other component is all the creative aspect of it, which drives all of that. It can't just all be this part, because you have to fuel that with excellence and creativity and magic. But I think it's the fact that we've constantly had people working on the business as well as people working in the business. Now, what I mean by that is, when you're working in it day to day, you're very, very close to, right, must do this, I've got to do that, I must get this list done, got to get all these bits. But now, are you working in the business by doing the operational mechanical aspects of what makes that business tick? Now, what you need as well is someone who has one step back and go, right, well, you're doing that today. I'm looking here, I'm looking a month down the line, and I'm looking a year down the line of where we want to do or where we want to be. So I think we've always been very good at balancing people that work on it and in it at the same time, which allows the ball to roll continually in the direction we want it to go. So I think that's been a big part of our success.
There's a book, EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, that talks about those principles. I don't know if you've ever read it or heard of it, but it's... No. Do you know it?
Okay. I've only ever read 2 books in my entire life. I'm pretty badly dyslexic, so I really struggle with that. So I've never read anything. I kind of just made stuff up as I've gone along.
Well, you hit it right on the head. The on the business versus in the business. That's a principle that I heard in I was a TV news reporter, and my first job outside of news was working in marketing. And I thought it was just a load of BS when I first heard it, but I was young and didn't really care and was just collecting a paycheck. And then as the years went on, it kept popping up, this EOS system, which again is about on the business versus in the business. And until I owned my own business, I didn't realize how important that was. And so many people just get stuck in the minutia of being in the business that they're never able to advance. And I catch myself even though I catch myself in the busy work of things that are not necessarily going to move the needle, but I just get stuck in them. And I think that artists, they don't even realize, but they can relate to that so much too.
Totally, because look, you've got to be working on today's track, but you've also got to go, okay, I'm going to step back and go, how do all these records interact with each other? How does this create a strategy that moves me on as an artist? How do these records talk to each other across different labels or my own label? How does that create a year strategy or a 2-year strategy? And how does that then affect my life? How does that interact with that? Or what am I doing over here? Does that substantiate what I want to earn in terms of life? Are the records I'm writing big enough? Realize the fees I want to earn from DJing? And so, as well as you're caught up on finding the best snare to use, you need to go, right, I need to step back and go, how does the narrative of my music create a strategy for me as an artist? So you have to be aware of both. I use flights to do that a lot. When I can get on an 8-hour flight to the States and come off the internet and just look at my calendar and go, okay, how does this year look? How does it look like? Because I can visualize. I'm a very visual person in that respect. I can see things and how it all makes sense and what that then looks like as a year. What would I have achieved in a year? So I think it's good to take those moments away and just disconnect and go, right, let's look at this from a broader perspective and how it all makes sense. All that hard work, you've got to do all those bits. The things you have to do. Unfortunately, like you say, it doesn't move the needle, but collectively it makes a thing. But I think you need to mirror that with having days where you go, right, come out of that let's have a strategy day and see what that looks like as well as.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that's worked for me is having no meeting days at least twice a week where I'm just completely unavailable, because I think that's the more you grow as an artist, you're going to have people, a management team, you're going to have people calling you for this, for that. And you get so stuck in that you can't, at least for me, my brain, meeting days, I have no energy to devote to deep work, deep thinking on projects.
That's right. They're two completely different mindsets, aren't they? They really are. Mm-hmm. But you have to have time and the headspace to really fulfill the whole remit of what you need to be an artist, I guess.
So with all the artist development you've done, what is there a mindset shift that you see in artists, that something that clicks and it's that thing that takes them from bedroom producer to professional?
I think I don't think it's a kind of eureka moment. I think it's the people with the right energy and the right discipline are the people that make it. And you can see that from an early age. If I hit people up and say, I need you to do this, and they do it and they get it done and they're on it. For example, Mikhail Cruci is here. We were just in the studio. He's the perfect exponent of someone who's got talent in abundance, yet he's got his shit together. If I say to him, Cruci, tomorrow or tonight, can you get this done? It's done. It's done without fail. It's delivered in the morning. And they're the people that I back, the people that mirror my energy and work ethic. And they're the people that generally make it. The people that you got to go around wiping their asses. Come on, you've got to get out of bed now. No, man, that's not the thing. That doesn't inspire or invigorate anyone here to mirror that with the same energy. So I think those people that have that drive, because that drive is that unquantifiable, untangible asset that you have that will get you can through any situation. Without doubt, I'm not the most talented musician in the world. Am I the hardest worker? Yeah, I'd say I probably am. If you're going to do 24 hours, I'll just do 25 and beat you. I'll just beat you by working harder. Because that's a skill we can all have. I would love to be as musically talented as Eric Prydz. That would be amazing. To be able to be that gifted. I'm not, and I'm realistic about that. But it just means I have to work harder, and that's down to me. If I want certain things, certain markers in life, it just dictates that I need to work harder. And I think those people who have that mindset and that approach are the people that are going to win. I don't think all of a sudden that switch is on. You've either got that fire burning in you as a person or you haven't, and I think I have never really met artists that get to the top of the tree who haven't got that inbuilt energy that allows them to be there.
Sure. Yeah. I think I was doing a workshop last night with this group out of LA, and the founder of 6 a.m. group, he said it's all about finding your why. And when you can do that is what leads to this drive that you're talking about. If you have this unshakable thing that you just need to do this, when you find that, that's what inspires that
absolutely
drive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest challenge in life, is to find out what is your purpose, what's your thing. It took me 10 years to work out. Like when I was playing football, and I was just working on a building site, but I knew it, and I was doing music all the time. I knew there was something in me that, look, and I had a moment. I remember being on a building site and it was so fucking cold, I couldn't even pick my trowel up. I was like, I don't want to be here now. I know, I didn't mean this in a really bullshitty way. I know there's something burning in me that's bigger than this. I know, I can be more than this. And that, I love being a bricklayer. It was brilliant. But I just knew burning in me there was a passion to really achieve. And football and music was my two big passions. And I knew football that I'd taken it as far as I could. It was a very decent level, but I knew I'd never get to the top because I was still working as well. But I knew in music there was something in me that I could realise. And like you say, when you find that why and you can mirror that with drive and passion, then you set your own. Sky's the limit. You set your own boundaries. Away you go.
100%. Yeah. And you never forget those moments when you're like, fuck this. I can't do this anymore. I need to do what I was born to do.
Absolutely. And that doesn't, it doesn't always happen from an early age. Sometimes you've got to go around the block, you've got to make mistakes, you've got to know what you like and what you don't like. But there comes a point in life, I think probably when you're in your 30s, early 30s, you need to make that call and go, right, I've tried some shit, that I like, that I don't like. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to go down this avenue. But I think, it's having that realisation, that moment, and then mirroring it with drive and dreams and passion, and then, you can write your own destiny.
It's amazing. This has been such an incredible conversation. I could talk to you for hours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
But I know that you have lots to do. So thank you for spending some time and imparting your wisdom. Everybody needs to hear this stuff.
Look, it's common sense. I'm not saying anything nobody doesn't know. I'm really not. Most of this boils down to common sense, and if you can just apply that to what we do in terms of creativity, if you can think in both fields, one in common sense and practicality, and approach it in a very practical sense, and then mirror that with magic, it's game on.
That's your weekly elevation. Having Mark Knight on the show is a masterclass in building something that stands the test of time, and it was such an incredible privilege to speak with him. His decision to create his own platform rather than rely on others has given him a level of control few artists ever achieve. His philosophy of consistent forward momentum, never taking steps backward, has built Toolroom into a powerhouse that's weathered every industry storm. And perhaps more importantly, his perspective on hard work trumping natural talent offers hope to anyone willing to put in the hours. The blueprint is clear. Create your own opportunities, move forward consistently, even if slowly, and be prepared to outwork everyone. That's how legends are made. Remember, success in dance music isn't about luck, it's about strategy. I'll talk to you next week.